Ọlọ́run ló ṣe yìí fún wa o. Agbára wa kọ́ rárá. Ọlọ́run ló ṣe yìí fún wa o. Agbára wa kọ́ rárá. Ọlọ́run ló ṣe yìí fún wa o. Agbára wa kọ́ rárá. Ọzọ ladoka ite abịago anyị jizi ife dị mmadụ maka Olisa bụ ike anyị Chukwu bi n'igwe bụ ike anyị ifuru ife ọma erutaghị anyị aka nwanne m ka anyị gbolibe kele Chukwu.
I want to create the evidence of why Professor Adeniyi to the high table. Vice Chancellor, I want to also recognize and invite to the high table the supervisor of the lecturer of today's faculty lecture, Professor Adeniyi. The series of the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, the youngest faculty and the fastest. Because we want to create an environment of intellectual engagement in the faculty and the university community. And by so doing, we believe that for the rest of the week, after delivering the lecture, the discussion will be what will provoke or activate the conversation of the university for now, tomorrow, next week, or the upper week. Just like what happened in the third faculty lecture. Without wasting much of the time, I want to stop and I appreciate everybody for coming. The sixth faculty lecture will be delivered by Professor Adeniyi.
Thank you, Professor Ebijua. Let me quickly recognize the presence of a very distinguished member of the Governing Council, Professor Thompson Adejumo. Please be upstanding so that we can recognize where you are seated, sir. We also have the Director of Academic Planning of this university, Professor Bolanle Aishat Akinwande. You are welcome, ma'am. We have a former librarian of this university, Professor Adewale Ajala. Please be upstanding for recognition. Thank you so much. At this point, we go to hear from the owner of the university, the representative of the Vice Chancellor, Professor Abel Ogunwale.
On behalf of the Vice Chancellor of the University, Professor Rasak Olatunde Rom Kalilu, it gladdens my heart to welcome every one of us to this faculty lecture series. You will all permit me to stand on the protocol already established by the Dean of the faculty, Professor Ibijuwa. I will not want to take your time, but I just want to make these simple comments about the faculty. As expressed by the Dean of the faculty himself, Professor Ibijuwa, the youngest but the fast-growing faculty academically. I observed that. And I want to tell you that I'm going to report that to the Vice Chancellor. I must really appreciate the faculty for coming up with lecture series at a time like this. While the Dean was speaking the other time, he said the 6th faculty lecture will be delivered by, he didn't stop there. The 7th will be delivered by, the 8th until the counted 10. I want to challenge us, everyone seated here this afternoon. The essence of a university is to engage in academics intellectual discourse that will provoke the thoughts of not only the community members, but the general public. It's high time we engage in the primary assignment we are called to do. And I want to commend today's lecturer, Professor Osunbade, for this bold step you have taken forward. I remember shortly before Professor Adeniyi gave me this, I was looking at the topic. A good child is the fathers, a bad one, the mothers. The responsibilizing Omoluabi ideological orientation in Yoruba parenting discourse. I believe very strongly by the time you finish your lecture this morning, everybody will go back and begin to think about how I need to parent my children. For some of us that are having young adults, we know that issue of parenting is very, very important in our home fronts. I pray God will help you to deliver and bring out salient points that will challenge our thoughts, our conduct, and carrying out our responsibilities in our various homes. I want to thank you on behalf of the Vice Chancellor for coming en masse to attend this lecture. Having said this, I, on behalf of the Vice Chancellor, Professor Rom Kalilu, hereby declare this public lecture open. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Please join me in inviting Ms. T.M. Falade to come and read the citation of the lecturer.
The Vice Chancellor, sir, all the principal officers, professors, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I crave the indulgence of our lecturer for today, Professor Adeniyi Osunbade, to please rise as I read his citation. Standing before this audience of intellectuals is a Prince Professor blessed with the graceful and intellectual distinction of a thoroughbred academic. Ladies and gentlemen, permit me therefore to refer to this humble, human, accessible, amiable, and admirable teacher and scholar. As an icon of pragmatics and discursive intellectualism of our time and of our dear university. This iconic figure is no other person than Professor Osunbade Adeniyi Oluwagbemiga. Born into the Olugbo royal dynasty, Osunbade Adeniyi complemented his royal status with good education. He bagged his Bachelor of Arts degree at the prestigious Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, and his Master of Arts as well as doctoral degrees at the premier university, the University of Ibadan. Having worked with consistent doggedness and focus, he rose through the academic ranks to become a professor of English language with specializations in pragmatics and discourse studies. Through the grace of God, he has enjoyed a meteoric rise in his professional endeavors. Within a short period of time in the Nigerian context, he rose to the position of a full professor, effective from October 1st, 2017 in Ladoke Akintola University of Technology, Ogbomoso. With this feat, he became one of the youngest professors in LAUTECH, the first professor of English language in LAUTECH, the first professor in the Olugbo royal dynasty, Oyo State, an eminent professor of pragmatics and discourse studies in Nigeria, the first fellow of the African Humanities Program of the American Council of Learned Societies to be professor of pragmatics and discourse studies in Nigeria, among other attainments. As a fecund and growth-inspiring university don, he has been able to mentor and mold so many vibrant minds via public lectures, workshops, and trainings towards impacting the country's image making and contributing to manpower development of the country. Osunbade, a focused and avid scholar of international repute, has more than 70 scholarly publications in reputable journals locally and internationally, in Africa, Asia, Europe, and America. He has presented several academically incisive papers at local and international conferences on topical issues that have direct relevance to humanity, as he believes that academic work becomes useful when it impacts the society. Little wonder then that his PhD thesis won the prestigious Dissertation Completion Grant Award for Outstanding Thesis in 2010 of the American Council of Learned Societies. His further research also won the Early Career Postdoctoral Fellowship Award in 2012, and thus became a life fellow of this learned society, which is a renowned promoter of African humanistic scholarship. He has also won the Council for the Development of Social Science Research in Africa and Tertiary Education Trust Fund, TED Fund Conference Attendant Grants, among others. These outstanding scholarship manifestations have earned him professional recognitions as an external assessor for the Department of General Studies, Federal Polytechnic Ede, and Department of General Studies, College of Agriculture and Technology, Igora, an external examiner to the Department of English, Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, the Department of English, University of Ibadan, the Department of English, Ajayi Crowther University, the Department of English, Adekunle Ajasin University, among others. For the examination of dissertation and doctoral thesis, he has also been a seasoned reviewer for academic journals in Nigeria, Ghana, USA, UK, South Africa, Botswana, the Netherlands, and so on. That Osunbade is a versatile and dynamic scholar is obvious from other engagements such as sporting activities, administration and strategic management in the university. He was acting head, Department of General Studies, LAUTECH, chairman Orientation Committee, LAUTECH, acting chairman University Admissions Committee, among others. Also, he is the pioneer head of the Department of English and Literary Studies, Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. He is a honorary coach to the university's badminton team, the coach of the university's debating and public speaking team, and a number of different academic boards at Ladoke Akintola University of Technology, Ogbomoso. Ladies and gentlemen, for a lecture such as today's, which requires fetching from the Yoruba cultural water, a versatile intellectual like Professor Osunbade, who has worked with many discourses, including family discourse, has been fished like a metaphorical big fish. The Vice Chancellor, sir, other principal officers, ladies and gentlemen, may I request your standing ovation and resounding rounds of clap as I invite a renowned purple-blooded scholar, a African, a cerebral researcher of international repute, and an intellectual juggernaut, Prince Professor Adeniyi Osunbade, for today's faculty lecture.
I would have loved to stand on already established protocol, but because my role today is that of the metaphoric big fish, as said by the last speaker, I'm expected to be heard from. So I would give my protocol as the genre of public lecture requires. The Vice Chancellor, sir, ably represented by Professor Ogunwale. Other principal officers here present. The DVC Strategy and Development, our father. The DVC Academics and Innovation, my big brother. The Chairman Committee of DVCs, Provost and Deans. The Dean Faculty of Art and Social Sciences, the first Dean of the first faculty to be 2-in-1. And of course, the man who has taught us to always keep the ground running in academics and research excellence. The Dean Postgraduate School, my big brother. Dean of other faculties here present. Professors in the university. Directors of units. Colleagues within the faculty and from other faculties. They are students of LAUTECH, greatest students, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Well, the title of my lecture, as we will all see, is A Good Child is the Father's, a Bad One, the Mother's. And I have a rider that says, de-responsibilizing or responsibilizing Omoluabi ideological orientation in Yoruba parenting discourse. Before I go to the lecture proper, I'd like to give a preamble. And in my preamble, I start by letting you know that, let me read first. Let me start by mentioning that standing before this distinguished audience is a teacher and a researcher in English linguistics, whose research manifests pragmatics and discourse analytic anchorage. And in these areas where I research, discourse analysis, and pragmatics, I have aligned that whatever meaning you want to talk about in discourses are going to be negotiated by participants, those who are involved in the discourse. And they are going to use different contexts of interaction, either the native context or the non-native context. And what they are trying to do is to arrive at meaning. In my discipline, being English linguistics, we look at how linguistic elements in those discourses, elements of languages, like the figures of speech, like the aphorisms that are used, like the metaphorical choices of words, play roles in giving us meaning. My task today is very simple. It is to demonstrate how such linguistic elements in the aspect of Yoruba parenting discourse play role in advancing against what I call indigenous knowledge devaluation, borrowing from Odukoya 2024 when he gave the PG school lecture. The essence is to say that indigenous knowledge is largely being devalued. And of course, such devaluations will not really assist us. With respect to bringing up children, we are trying to say that we should uphold significant aspects of indigenous knowledge that assist us. With respect to the Yoruba society, which is a macho-sensitive language usage context, by that we mean a society dominated by the belief that the male folk is superior, and as a result, we want to see how we will be able to demonstrate how language can assist in the understanding of homoluabi orientation, and of course, how the parenting can be further enhanced. It is therefore a great pleasure for me to present this 5th edition of the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences lecture series. The first was given by the Dean of the faculty himself, Professor T. Ebijua, the pioneer and the current Dean of the faculty. The second by Professor A. Tijani, the head of the History Department and the Chief Imam of Lautech. The third was given by Professor Adejumo, and the fourth by Professor Obi Olawi, the pioneer head of all Department of General Studies that gave birth to all the departments we have in the new Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. Numerologically, the number 5 is a significant number in human society, and some of the numerous significances are therefore relatable to me, and they are as indicated below. Biblically, you would see that 5 symbolizes God's grace, kindness, mercy, which I have enjoyed up to date. Also, in Ephesians 4:11-13, the Lord asked Christians to fill 5 roles to make up the church. The 5 roles are called the fivefold ministry, and they are either a Christian is to be an apostle, an evangelist, a prophet, a pastor, or a teacher. And by the grace of God, I am feeling one of them as a teacher. In physiology, 5 senses are identified: the sense of sight, smell, hearing, touch, and taste, all playing valuable roles to living entities. In Ifa numerology, apart from its association with Osun as one of our sacred numbers, don't forget I'm Osunbade, 5 also represent the 5 senses and elements of nature, namely water, fire, earth, air, and wind, which are all instrumental to our existence. These are the core essentials of living and existence. And lastly, 5 loaves of bread were part of the food items Jesus fed 5,000 people with. As I would fill this distinguished audience with the 5th intellectual meal today. Ladies and gentlemen, I must confess that the responses and reactions of the audience at the 3rd fast lecture series given by Professor Adejumo on Falia autocracy, feminine wise, and gender binaries within the context of Yoruba ontology spurred me to seriously ruminate about the need for the renaissance, which we call rebirth, of some other aspects of indigenous knowledge in Yoruba parenting discourse that are gradually been devalued due to westernization and sometimes due to other factors like laissez-faire attitudes of the women or our mothers to children value sensitive discipline in parenting. Eventually, the idea of re-advancing for the nexus between traditional, father-centered, and of course, cultural-oriented parenting discourse and Omoluabi ideological concept of the Yoruba made me arrive at the title, A Good Child is the Father's and a Bad One, the Mother. Deresponsibilizing or responsibilizing Omoluabi ideological orientation in Yoruba parenting discourse. It is hoped, ladies and gentlemen, that this fit intellectual meal will not only satisfactorily whet your appetite for more knowledge, but feed us intellectually, just as Jesus Christ satisfactorily fed 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes. As I go to my lecture proper, to introduce, let me go analogically in this way. Let me give a story that informed my orientation to look at that. I was somewhere and shown a video of a girl child who was at the valedictory service of a primary school and was asked to introduce herself and what she would like to become in future. This little girl took the mic, introduced herself, for example, as Adeniyi Ajanle Koko, for example. When I grow up, I like to become a stripper. The whole audience was surprised. That was appealing. The parents were disappointed. They left not taking the child along. They were obviously put to shame. I had heard many parents talk about children who would want to become, in this generation, either politician, which is relatively positive, or Yahoo boy. And I start to wonder, what is beginning to be wrong with parenting? So, as a way of introduction, I got to say parenting is an old factor. In fact, an age-long factor in the life of a child globally. And it is rooted in different orientations. Some of these orientations will be religious, traditional, and modern. In the olden days, and within our religion, approaches that are used have proven to be largely effective, given their recognitions of God and cultural values respectively. However, the situation in modern approach has changed. As Klein and Fay, 2006, page 12 about the human rights revolution, communication explosion, the internet, cell phones, changes in nuclear family, this and many other factors have radically changed how our children view the world, how they view life. Kids are forced to grow faster than their ages. They are forced to cope with so many things quicker than intellectual capacities. And these tremendous changes, challenges, and pressures of contemporary life have impacted on a lot of things. The impact of rising divorce rates, single parents raising kids, blended families, and other changes in the family have been dramatic. Consequently, parenting has become more challenging, necessitating that parents must learn to use different techniques with kids who live in today's complex and rapidly changing world. Thus, parenting now requires what I call love and cultural logic. We love. The fact is that good parenting centers around love. Love. First, love that is not permissive, unlike what we witness with many parents. Love that does not tolerate disrespect. Love that corrects. Then parenting with logic is complemented, in this instance. We complement parenting with love with parenting with logic. And parenting with logic is understood in the context of this lecture as the process of using culture-specific logical principles and philosophies to interpret the word. Scholars have looked at all of this from different perspectives. And of course, with respect to the concept of cultural logic, we have two broad perspectives. They talk about binary opposites, which Professor Adeniyi used in his lecture, and we talked about what we call unique logics. In this lecture, we have chosen the unique logic, which hold that each culture has its own unique logics or philosophical principles, tenets, values that assist us to train children. So this paper is considering parenting within the Yoruba context from the perspective of the unique logic of the Yoruba people. Parenting discourse is to be understood in this lecture as talks. And those talks are those that depict the role of language in the upbringing or training of children. And it is a significant aspect of parenting discourse. Parenting sensitive talks in the Yoruba society, for instance, are a practice that demonstrates linguistic and discursive means of providing guidance for children. In other words, we make use of language with all the resources of language to provide guidance for children. And of course, within linguistic or non-linguistic choices, language plays significant roles in the interactive orientations. And the ultimate goal is to ensure that a child is trained to become a well-trained child, which Yoruba would call Omoluabi. In Yoruba, this is the concept of Omoluabi. According to Odebumi, 2015, I'm glad as a researcher, I'm able to call my supervisor, boss, and mentor by name because the John permits it. Odebumi 2015 actually gave us the definition of Omoluabi to encapsulate the idea of a good Yoruba person. And it says it is impactful in determining the Yoruba identity. So when you see a Yoruba person, the identity you want to see in a number of things, either behavior, they come forward to prostrate to greet you, or they want to show some other forms of orientations to the Omoluabi. And all of these become the basis for what we want to do. Parenting discourse, yes, has of course been studied from different perspectives. We do know that. And of course, some of the perspectives have looked at how African traditional religion, for example, Ifa, I have had a number of studies, researches, grants around Ifa discourses, and I've seen how Omoluabi is understood within the corpus of Ifa. We have also looked at other contexts of parenting discourse online, how children's language is influenced, how the styles of parenting are understood largely. And the ones on Omoluabi, I've also looked at Omoluabi either as a fundamental basis and philosophy of Yoruba people, or as means of understanding how character attributes are given to Yoruba children. We have noticed, however, that linguistic and humanistic studies have not looked at the nexus between parenting discourse and the concept of Omoluabi itself, which will be very important. And of course, what has that done? It has changed the leadership of what I call intellectual linguistic perspectives on the traditional father-centered upbringing of a Yoruba child. When I keep saying father-centered upbringing, it is because the society I'm looking at, the Yoruba society, is a patriarchal one, which emphasizes the role of the father over the mother in the upbringing of a child. And don't be surprised when the Yoruba father tells you that, did you bring a child from your father's house? Women tend to be angry, but that's not a question for today. So to explore all of this, I have looked at the data of what I call parenting sensitive aphorisms, okay, in the linguistic repertoire of the Yoruba, and I sampled them, subjected them to interpretation with consideration for the message and the content they have, and I have subjected them some theoretical frameworks in the discipline of discourse analysis and pragmatics, those that talk about responsibilization and deresponsibilization as advanced by some scholars, Kafi, Jacob May, and I've also looked at sociocultural approach to what we call critical discourse analysis as advanced by some scholars to look at the ideology that is there and the Yoruba ideology being foregrounded. Okay, so the interest is to look at how all of this come together to explain how the Yoruba culture gives the man certain strengths, privileges, advantages in the way they talk about the bringing of children. In part B of the lecture, which I call Discursive Dynamisms and Omoluabi Ideology in Yoruba Parenting Context, I start by saying that the dynamic nature of parenting discourse, no doubt, impacts on how it affects discursive issues and participants in a given context of interaction. In Yoruba parenting context, the discursive orientation tilts primarily towards language-dependent communicative approaches to child upbringing. So everything depends on language and how language is used. These approaches include three. One, the manifestation of failure autocracy as advanced by Adeniyi. Two, we talk about feminine will as advanced by Adeniyi. And three, we talk about religious orientations as advanced by so many scholars. Okay, in the parents' interaction with their children, and they make use of proverbs, aphorisms, witty remarks, etc. What do we call failure autocracy? So that we don't start sounding like people who use language we do not understand. Okay, failure autocracy itself is a word that can be understood from its morphological decomposition. When I break the word down, you would get the meaning. That's what I am saying. There are two morphemes in it. One is called phallus. The other is called autocracy. Phallus itself refers to male sex organ, as described by Hornby in 1995. And in this context, it is used as a strategy in literature to use a part to represent the whole. So you have used a part of the human being, a male, the phallus, to represent him. So when you say phallus, and you now say autocracy, on the other hand, we now talk about domineering rule or control of man. So I talk about failure autocracy as domineering rule or control of men, typically in a patriarchal society. Don't forget, I didn't say as abrogated by men or as preferred by men, but as advanced by the society. Remember, a man is a product of society and are so living according to the dictate of society. And that's why it's a man that's going to bring yam, oranges, his families, and every other thing to a woman's house to say, give her to me in marriage, in our context. Why is it that men do not stay in their homes, while women will now take all of those things, including their own families, to say, let me marry your son? Cultural affordances, how the culture has presented it. So within the understanding of that culture, we are trying to say that the man is empowered. Yes, as Adeniyi know, you call her advanced, so that it doesn't become what Osunbade alone is saying. Most African societies are unapologetically patriarchal in outlook. I underline are unapologetically patriarchal in outlook. In this context, social relationships are anchored on gender-fostered considerations, which arrogate certain assumed superiorities and privileges to the masculine side of our sexes divide. This consideration has remained the breeding ground for all kinds of negative prejudices, which insidiously subvert the status and social placement of the woman person. Now, the above reiterate that the patriarchal lineage of our society in Africa is signposted by a certain behavioral model which place the woman at receiving end of certain prejudices. Unfortunately, though, however, what we see is that the essence is not to diminish women or to demean them. It is actually to assist them, take difficult roles away from them because they are weaker vessels, and possibly strengthen the men in areas where the stress could get a woman down. Now you begin to see understandings giving us behavioral and relational manners of interpreting how women are subdued, and some say it reduces them to nothing. It removes every vestige of humanness from them, which isn't what we are advancing here. Yes, various behavioral and linguistic devices are used by Yoruba men to clip the wing of women, and you will see why such clipping may or may not be necessary in the course of this lecture. When it comes to feminine wives, what we are saying is that in the parenting context of Yoruba, women use what we call femininity and gender tricks or cunningness to influence the behavior of children, usually in the mother's favor, relative to that of the father. Essentially, the manifestations of the feminine wife at the various segments of society in Yoruba, okay, is targeted at subverting the so-called male patriarchal autocracy. You say you are the man. I will use my wife to get the children. Okay? So, as a result, you would see that given the traditional Yoruba culture that is male-centric and female subjugated, it becomes a behavioral and linguistic survival strategy for the Yoruba women, especially in winning children over in the parenting context, contrary to societal expectation. Now, religious orientation is another perspective that says, as yes, in our discourses, we allude to different aspects of religion to parent and train our children. Typically, Yoruba parents allude to different religious values in the upbringing of their children. Biblically, parents are expected to instill discipline in their children. And of course, in the instilling discipline, you can spank them, you can chastise them, you can guide them on the path of righteousness. If I allude to Proverbs 13:24, the English Standard Version of the Bible states, whoever spares the rod hates his son, but he who loves him is what? Diligent to discipline him. For instance, this emphasizes the biblical stance on religious discursive approach to parenting. Quranically, the value of word-sensitive parental discipline and guidance is pronounced. As my chief imam will affirm, Luqman the wise addressed his son thus, "Oh, my son, establish prayer, enjoy what is right, forbid what is wrong, and be patient over what befalls you." And that's found in Surah Luqman 31:17. And in Ifa, the Ifa verses, which strongly project the traditional Yoruba religious beliefs in the duty of parents to bring up their children ethically. To the Ifa devotees, in Yoruba parenting, children are made to believe in rewards and punishment whenever they do what is right or what is wrong. Consequently, the communal atmosphere of the traditional family of parenting is such that when a child behaves well, the parents are praised. When a child does not behave well, the parents are put to shame and they are asked to put their houses in order. Okay, as Babatunde observes. Now, parents' role in training of their children is reflected in the Ifa verse below, as you will find in an Odu of Ifa, as advanced by Adewale 1986, page 63. Bí a bá tọ́mọ ẹni, wọn á gbọ́n tinú tòde bí ire ọmọbìnrin olókun. Bí a ò bá sì tọ́mọ ẹni, wọn á ponú bí ìbáwí ni ọmọkùnrin ó tu Ifẹ̀. Translated as, if one trains one's children, they will be perfectly wise as Ire, the daughter of Olokun. If one does not train one's children, they will be stupid and foolish, like Ibawini, the son of Otu Ife. Essentially, parenting in Yoruba society via the above discursive approaches, family autocracy, feminine wild, and religious orientation, is aimed on dynamic and pragmatic selection of languages, either verbal choices or non-verbal choices. Most of these resources, however, review cultural practices that tell us power relation between the father, the mother, and the children. And of course, these are headed by what we call shared beliefs of the participant in the discourse. We all know that, the father is the head of the home, and of course, the mother is playing complementary role. And as a result, the children are meant to listen to both of them while recognizing the superiority role of the father. So essentially, when they are talking, they use witty remarks, reduce aphorisms to parent. Particularly, it now entrenches what we call Omoluabi ideology in Yoruba towards training them to become good parents. The demonstration of Omoluabi ideology itself hinges more on character in the establishment of social bonds, and social bond can manifest as either what we call phatic encounters, greeting. Okay, in Yoruba, there are different forms of greeting. Our children have lost values of that. Okay, you have greetings that are based on professions. We have greetings that are based on game. We have greetings that are based on casual routines, activities, and we have greetings that are seasonal. Ekaro, ekason, ekuyaleta, ekale. Our children do not know the difference in those kinds of greeting, so they cannot engage them in wanting to be omoluabi. When it comes to expression of appreciation and responses to questions, okay, we talk about that being an aspect of omoluabi. When it now comes to marking high moral values or standard, there are three perspectives that can be exhibited as advanced by Odebumi. You talk about integrity. Integrity talks about Yoruba child being truthful. You're talking about rectitude in Yoruba child's training, dependability in keeping covenants, and in keeping words that they have said they will do or will not do. Okay. You talk about straightforwardness and avoidance of what? Hypocrisy. We also talk about considerateness as an anomaly be valued. How do you become considerate? You talk about chastity. Chastity in sexual matters, for example, selflessness, for example, hospitality, kindness, generosity. When we visit our friends and their wives do not offer us food, we take them not to be omoluabi because they are not generous. In Igbo land, they will first bring cola because he who brings cola brings life. Those are significant aspects of the omoluabi ethos of the Yoruba. When you go to your friends' houses these days, the children will come to the sitting room and will not even offer you water. Where is the value of omoluabi that we are talking about? All of this have been advanced. And when we come to difference, we're talking about due respect to parents. You see children wanting to handshake their father's friends. I don't understand the omoluabi ethos in that. You talk about respect for elders, and all of this have become the nuances of omoluabi that we want to look at how a father has helped a home to instill in children, and how a mother has possibly complemented the role of the father or prevented from doing so by the culture of the Yoruba people. So I look at the theoretical orientations that I have used to interrogate these issues, and these are going to clarify some of the issues I'm talking about. In theory, I have adopted insights from a combination of what I call the concept of deresponsibilization and responsibilization. What do I mean? I've been sounding like that since morning. It is time to clarify both of them. And you will see that they are so simple. It's just that we like to talk about concepts that are meta terms in disciplines so that we understand how to advance knowledge in those disciplines. Now, and I'm going to complement that with what Van Dyke calls socio-cognitive approach to critical discourse analysis. Okay, so critical discourse analysis, like I said earlier, will tell us how we understand ideology. The ideology here would be omoluabi ideology and the male superiority in the Yoruba society, where the man is given rights and accorded power over a lot of things. So, to clarify what I call deresponsibilization, let me look at CAFI, okay, in 2002, 2007, that talks about act of avoiding or sidetracking responsibility. That's deresponsibilization, as simple as that. Avoiding or sidetracking responsibility. Okay, so it describes the act of avoiding responsibility, and of course, sometimes we call it weakened responsibility. You may want to weaken the responsibility of somebody for a reason. It could be tactical, it could be cultural, it could be religious, it could be professional. We will get there, and you see how we talk about it. So this generally talks about tactical and purposive sidetracking of responsibility, either directly, indirectly, or overtly or covertly. So verbal deployment, for example, are acts of deresponsibilization in the Yoruba society, which help us to sidetrack responsibility. Now, the other one, when we talk about responsibilization, I'm talking about the concept that talks about accepting responsibility, taking responsibility for an action When it comes to deresponsibilization in this context of Yoruba discourse, it is a way of shifting blame on the woman. When it comes to responsibilization, it is a way of what? Giving credit to men, whereby weakening the responsibility of women and subduing them is a cultural tactic, okay? Because there's a belief that women use laissez-faire attitude to and feminine way to spoil the children and unable to assist them in properly getting the omoluabi value that the father wants to entrench on the child. Now, students, you will agree with me that we deresponsibilize a lot so that it helps you to understand the idea of deresponsibilization. And in some instances, when it favors you, you responsibilize. What do I mean? You got an A in a course. What will you say? I got A. That's responsibilizing. You are taking responsibility and credit for it. When you scored F, what do you say? They gave me F. That is deresponsibilization. You are shifting responsibility of your failure on the lecturer, which is a strategy of not taking responsibility. Henceforth, learn how to responsibilize correctly and how to deresponsibilize correctly. I remember that in the Garden of Eden, the man deresponsibilizes. When he was found culpable of an act God says don't do, he said, it was the woman whom you gave me. He shifted the responsibility on God. You would see that it is not a Yoruba cultural orientation strictly, but a strategy that has existed from time immemorial for men. So stop castigating Yoruba men. Let us say it is how God has created the nuances and nature for men, and who are we to say no to what God has said? When I come to socio-cultural orientation of critical discourse analysis, it says human beings do one thing. They use language to connect with the society so that the structure of the society is projected. The structure is male-centeredness. So languages will center around men to favor men in a number of instances. But I do know that men are in that euphoria helplessly. In the reality, the woman's is the word. In the reality, the ground I step on is called mother earth. The language of my father that I speak is called mother tongue. And ladies and gentlemen, they say madam. If I literally call it madamu, that is somebody who knows how to handle the machete. Whereas you say okunrin lada, who now knows how to handle the machete? The woman. Hence the name madam. So you would understand that even though the patriarchal structure tends to give men superiority, the reality is reverse. And that's why you would understand the ethos of this lecture, not actually saying that men own the children that are good, but saying that men are deceiving themselves by saying so. You will see when we get there. I go to instantiating how responsibilization and deresponsibilizations are so achieved in Yoruba aphorism. And I've cited some examples that will help us. Let's quickly look at some of them. I said in the interactive context of Yoruba parenting, aphorism usages reveal the manifestation of the father's responsibilization and responsibilization strategies as might be related to the father. So a father either deresponsibilizes or responsibilizes in Yoruba aphorisms that have to do with children parenting. Let's start with deresponsibilization and Yoruba Omoluabi ideology. The responsibilization occurs in the sampled aphorisms on the part of the father as a tenor-dependent communication strategy. What does that mean? It's a strategy that just tells him that the tenor of discussion is that you are the head of the home, so accept it. Okay? It places a lot of other responsibilities on you. Let's go there. In regard to holding the mother accountable. Now, you will now hold the mother accountable. As a father, it's a strategy for a child's social relationship or moral standards. Yorùbá ní ẹni tọ́lọ́pàá fẹ́ràn ló ń tì mọ́lé. The police locks up the child he likes. Now, when you deresponsibilize, you push the blame on the woman so that she's conscious that, oh, I don't spoil this child. Otherwise, the father's children or family will say that I'm responsible for what is bad. It forces mothers to do what is right. It is just a tactic, a strategy. It's not demeaning, but strategic. So let us see how this is done in many cases. The responsibilization here occurs in the aphorism when all of this happen. Let's look at examples 1 to 7. The general background is this. When a child does what is bad, whether he doesn't greet well, whether he lies, whether he stole, whether he was rude, and in the context of Yoruba, they want to punish the child verbally so that the child begins to see how to retrace the step and do what is right. If you chastise the child alone, the Adeniyi belief of Yoruba is that the child will not see it as anything. Yoruba ni kò ní mọ̀ lọ́rùn, he won't see it as anything bad. But co-opt the mother in the chastising. It helps the mother to be conscious next time that don't allow your father's people or Yoruba people to abuse me again. Do what is right. So it's just a pure strategy of the Yoruba culture to co-opt the mother in parenting towards good ọmọlúàbí. Let's see an example. Ọmọ tó dáa ní baba, èyí tí ò dáa ní ìyá ẹ̀. A good child is the father, a bad one is the mother. Emphasis on a bad one is the mother. So the child has misbehaved. And in the context of talking to the child, I said, continue. Ọmọ tó dáa kúkú ní ti baba, èyí tí ò dáa ní ti ìyá ẹ̀. What have I simply done? I have undermined, okay, I have said that this child has misbehaved, and that misbehavior has undermined the good home training the child is being given, all right? And the father has decided to deresponsibilize by shifting the responsibility of the non-ọmọlúàbí orientation on the mother. Okay, that mechanism is an indirect way of making the mother accountable for the child's bad behavior, which will now make the mother more conscious next time. It orients negatively to the ọmọlúàbí ideology to say that you're not being an ọmọlúàbí, okay, it's not fully or wholly your fault, but because the laissez-faire attitude of your mother, who uses feminine wife, instead of letting you see what is bad, is affecting here. Another example. Owuti Yagbon ni ọmọ ràn. Okay, it is a mother's footstep that a child follows. Say a child, for example, who abuses very well. Culturally, the belief is that which gender abuses more? Which gender abuses more? So it is easy to say, Owuti Yagbon lọmọ ràn. Okay, and people begin to look at the mother as, oh, you are not helping the father in the proper upbringing of this child. So what I see here is, with respect to integrity, discipline, and a few other things, when we contextualize and we say it is the mother's footstep that the child follows, okay, now the Yoruba child who has insulted or done something wrong will be conscious that something is wrong. The deresponsibilization here has been anchored on what we call hedging. We have shifted the blame there, and we have edged it to say, oh, you are not completely guilty, all right? The mother is not completely guilty, but both of you are co-ops. And of course, let's see when next you want to do that if your mother will not quickly caution you. And when that happens, you are beginning to understand how the speaker, the Yoruba father, will be invoking what we call authoritative cultural value of the Yoruba to mask his utterance as, of course, talking about negative behavioral prejudice attributed to the mother. So it's not a negative prejudice from the father. It's a tactic to train both the mother and the father, because the father is kuku, the teacher, the headmaster in the home, while the mother is also a teacher. And sometimes the headmaster can chastise the teacher too, that you are not doing work well. I say you are not working. And you are not working because he has not seen the result of your work. So in this instance, we talk about now here the belief is that the child has been influenced to misbehave by the mother. All right. And of course, the responsibilization serves to say that the woman's parenting skill, parenting status has been subverted so that she begins to take responsibility for that too. It is not in all instances that we talk about women being chastised, being insulted, being abused, being indirectly, or being subjugated. But there are instances which does that even stronger than the first. I said a more interesting deresponsibilizing, which unfortunately denigratingly subverts the woman's role in parenting. This also subverts the woman's role. And in giving her more blame is in a situation where you have a behavior that undermines the child ideological value again. In an instance where a man will say, or Yoruba culture will say, Ifun ya elo jaje. Literally, Ifun would say, will mean viscera. Okay, literally will say, you have ingested your mother's viscera. But when we want to translate, we can say you take after your mother's behavior. Okay, so in explicating the Yoruba father's deresponsibilization in the context like this, the above utterance is typically therapeutically used to hold the mother accountable for the child's negative orientation to Omoluabi ideology. With respect to either poor social relations, maybe she's not relating well, she sees the father's friends and is using language that is not for them, and etc. Okay, and such aphorisms are indirect mechanism to eschew responsibility by indirectly referring to the mother in an inexcusable way, shifting responsibility of Omoluabi impactful parenting to her. Now, by sidetracking responsibility in this discourse, following a misbehavior which questions the child's Omoluabi ethos and condemns the negative behavior of the child, you will see that the father has blamed the mother, okay, for the child's condemnable behavior. Now, the responsibility can also manifest in a more acerbic implication and condemnation of the woman, headed by cultural value necessitated assumptions, not us, but cultural values necessitated assumptions about a child's condemnable behavior. This is common. Men in Yoruba will eschew responsibility to the advantage of men by indirectly subverting the role of women too. You can hear Oma Aleni Fiowo Shijuele Babare. It is only a bastard that describes the direction of your father's compound through negative left figuring or gesturing, as the case may be. Another says, Bi Leban Toru. Kini Oma Alebe Nioti Dagbat. The second says, when the house is peaceful, it is because the bastard in the house is not yet of age. Now, let me engage these two examples. And example 4 illustrates a Yoruba father's deresponsibilized delivery of presumption of the mother's culpability. Underline, presumption. He has not said that the child is anomaly. It is just a presumption of the mother's culpability in the child's poor behavior, the child's non-Omoluabi behavior. Okay? As typical of an illegitimate child. He has not said it's an illegitimate child. That is the typical behavior of an illegitimate child. So it's indirectness. Okay? You don't want to be seen as an illegitimate child, behave well. Mother, you don't want them to think you have brought an illegitimate child, train your child to behave well. So the idea is to say that men use a macho-sensitive model which disempowers women by indirectly holding them accountable for the children's negative orientation to Omoluabi. And when that is done, okay, the father demonstrates deresponsibilization as a stereotypical way of holding the mother accountable, and such presumption will caution the women. Of course, it is to be understood that The position in example 4 and 5 is reinforced by the Yoruba belief that it is only the mother that can actually say the real father of the child. So in some quarters of the Yoruba, when a child's mother dies, while people are actually consoling, they say, congratulations, you are now a true one. The first time I heard it, I was taken aback. What does that mean? Then they explained. The only person that will confirm your paternity is gone. So until your mother dies, before we can ascertain whether you are a bastard or a true son of your father. So ladies and gentlemen, Yoruba would say, to elucidate this, a kì í bímọ ní ilé àgùntàn kó lọ sí ìsọ̀ ewúrẹ́. A child sired by sheep parentage does not pitch tent with the goat. Hence, the sheep translates to meekness and proper conduct reminiscent of the Omoluabi ethos, while the goat stands for stubbornness and unethical conduct that the goat is known for. However, Yoruba men are aware that such a child tagged bastard on account of non-orientation to Omoluabi ideology is not necessarily given birth to by the mother for another man. We know. But that the child behaves like a kogba, that is, a child who fails to yield to home training, and thus condemnable as a bastard. So the responsibilization here occurs as a typical Yoruba father would want to shift the responsibility of proper home training on the wife, whom the Yoruba culture will not stop indicting. Note it. The Yoruba culture will not stop indicting the wife over a child's bastardly behavior. Will not. It is cultural. So in example 6 and 7, however, this without the tension of women and made them smile a little. The manifestation of the responsibilization attenuates blames for children's negative orientation for the women. Attenuates, that is, reduces the gravity, the anonymity, the enforceability of the blame on women. Let's say it does. 1, ọmọ ọ̀sán. You see the difference? So it's not in all cases that the deresponsibilization is acerbic. In some instances, yes, it is attenuative, okay? The second one, àsùsọ́nà forí ìyá ẹ̀ gbọ́pọ̀. Àsùsọ́nà forí ìyá ẹ̀ gbọ́pọ̀. A child that defecates by the roadsides, what does it invite to the parent? Causes or implications onto the mother. Onto the mother. So in the scenarios you have here, in which a child did not greet elderly neighbors or has done something worse, for example, you will see that Yoruba will chastise the child as, oh, lekoile, you lack home training. So the father who possibly witnessed the scenario would angrily then address the child with such an aphorism. Either the one in 6, or the one in 7, àsùsọ́nà ló ń forí ìyá ẹ̀. Now, whichever the cases, you will see that in 6, the aphorism in 6 and 7 are applicable in almost same context, and sometimes in slightly different context. In the instantiation of the father's deresponsibilization in the context of parenting discourse, the presumption was that it was the child who failed to yield to home training, not that the mother did not train, not that the father did not train. So with that, the child became ill-behaved, and not that the mother had not trained him well, and not that the mother's Omoluabi ethos is also challenged. No, it's not. However, the implied exoneration of the mother irrespective, the mother was still indirectly held accountable for the child's presumptuous behavior in the non-demonstration of acceptable Omoluabi trait. So, and if the responsibilization is necessitated by a misbehavioral context leading to the utterance in 7, such imprecation inviting blame, that is, the blame on the mother, that are blames of causes, okay, will not be given to the child alone, but it becomes a big reproach on the child, though an indirect blameability on the mother. So the mother is still indirectly blamed, however you see this. Of course, generally, in such context, as the above. The mother's indirect blamability, where she is actually culpable. Note, in some instances, some mothers are actually culpable. Some are not. And in fact, many might not be. I didn't say many are not. Many might not be. Okay, it's actually due to laissez-faire attitude to Yoruba value-sensitive discipline, like Ayen Laju. So Westernization has come, and as a result, we can undermine some of those. Whereas undermining is selling away our own religious and cultural values, and by so devaluing them, we are losing a lot of positive aspects of parenting. Now, I go on to say that this instantiation of deresponsibilization in societal authority-infused interaction, as typical of Yoruba context of parenting, is significant for revealing how the father's role, strength, and insistence assist in instilling Omoluabi ideology in children. Now let's go to responsibilization and Omoluabi ideology while I'm moving close to the end of the lecture. You see, I put it this way. Responsibilization will manifest in our data as a father's, underline, failure autocracy influenced, two things, and cultural price sensitive communication strategy. Two, failure autocracy influenced, I'm the man. Society says so. So I'll take blame. Okay, I'll give blame to the woman and take credit for good things. Second is pride sensitive communication strategy. So as the man, the structure in social cognitive orientation is that, yes, as the man, the ego of the man comes in, the unconscious pride of being the man. Your child of 2 years will tell you, or 3 years sometimes, or will tell the sisters that I walk on and sorrow. It's the men that are talking. After all, we are the owner of the home. You will go to your father's house. I watched a movie someday, and they were to go to church. A 4-year-old child, a son. The father was at home, he didn't want to go to church. So the mother had prepared the daughters and they were on their way going. So when they asked the boy why he had not taken his bath, said, I walk on one later day, mommy and my law. I walk on one. So the daddy is not going. I'm also, who told you you are walking? That was what the mother said. And in real sense of it, is it not walking? It is an unconscious ego in the men, the pride that the society has infused and cannot be changed. So maybe that's why people say God, after all, is a male, because the voices and the languages point towards the confidence of masculinity. So let's see how some of these now play out in the Yoruba aphorism that give credit for man. I go back to that example. Now I'm taking the first part that eulogizes the man. You know, the first time we took the second part that denigrates the woman and subverts her. So we are taking the part that eulogizes the man. So a good child is the father's, the bad, the mother. Now you see the aphorisms here. Number 9. Ola bata ni modo son. Ola babomo ni momonya. Again, Ola bata ni modo son. Ola babomo lo momonya. It's literally interpreted as, it is the river bank that supports the flow of the river. It is the honor of the father that inspires the child. The honor of the father that inspires the child. Okay, so look at those. What have men done? They have taken credits, responsibilizing for the child's good behavior, the child's positive orientation to Omoluabi. In one instance, it is good behavior. Okay, it shows a typical father's use of direct and frontal locution, that is lexical items, constructed by attributing accountability for a child's positive behavior to self. Clearly, a good child is the father and a bad one is the mother, of course, will tell you that a father is given unreserved credit for a child's acceptable behavior, thereby taking the glory for being the family head, whose name is being positively projected. Let's see this. Though it is usually deployed as a compound sentence, yes. The second part indicates that a child may not do well if the mother indulges the child. And the first part unapologetically credits the father, you know. So the moment you have this, the lesson is this. The child is blatantly charged to orient towards positive Omoluabi ideology, as typically expected of a well-groomed child with the Yoruba patriarchal orientation. Thus, the responsibility of the child's good behavior is credited to the father. Because, as you will see much later in my conclusion, children are more scared of the father. And that structure assists in instilling discipline. And the mothers mostly invoke that structure too when they need it. So it is co-parenting or mutual parenting for same orientation, but with other strategies that might not be too friendly on the women. Also, the instantiation in now is an interesting strategy that indicates that a Yoruba father's responsibilities, or a Yoruba father, responsibilizes himself on a child's adherence to some moral values, being soft skills that impact on successful academic and professional endeavors. That's why you will hear Omo Koni. You never hear Omo Aboni or whatever it is in the Yoruba context, okay? It's on overt reference to the Yoruba cultural metaphor. The father in question consciously, again, unequivocally conveys the message of the father's credit for the child's applaudable behavior through a macho stance. It's a macho stance to say it is the honor of the father that inspires the child. You know, the honor of the mother won't inspire. After all, whose name are you bearing? You know, it's the father's name. So it is the name that inspires you. All right. I hope there's no form of feminine rebel, feminine wild, macho, autocratic disorientation there. Thank you. Now, we move on to say this responsibilization strategy does typically attribute inspiration or motivation of a child towards success to a strictly father's aided act. Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice Chancellor, sir, dignitaries here present, my concluding remarks. The Yoruba aphorism, ọmọ tó dára ní ti bàbá, èyí tí kò dára ní ti ìyá ẹ̀. A good child is father's, a bad one is the mother. In the title of this lecture, I underline this, does not undermine the roles of women in parenting Yoruba worldview. It doesn't undermine the roles of women in parenting in Yoruba worldview. What does it do? Rather, it is a biblical Solomonic strategy, wise strategy, of alluding to what I call parenting with love and cultural logic, where the love is metaphorized as the attitude that encourages responsibility, and the patriarchal structure of the Yoruba society, okay, would enforce that in a child. Why parenting with cultural logic, from the perspective of the unique logic, evoke Yoruba's notion of discipline, which the fear of a father naturally evokes in a child. Even at the mere mention of the arrival of the father to a naughty child, Baba re lo de o, ifejo re sun baba re. So the child quickly couples and pretends to do what is right, if actually not doing it at that time. So you invoke the macho structure when you want the child to listen to you. But when you don't want the child to listen to you, you think you are condemned. No. So the stance here is simple. Thus, in the Yoruba culture, the belief is that discipline, mostly enforced by the father, largely aids responsible behavior in children. And it helps them to grow in maturity. The hypothesis is, once these are achieved, a great portion of the parenting task of the Yoruba parent would be seen to have been achieved. To strengthen my stance, let me emphasize that for the Yoruba, the right way a child is to be trained is to evoke the patriarchal structure of giving credit of a child's good behavior to the father, whose fear, as well as less sentimental, and less empathetic parenting styles, okay, are constructively valuable. So the essence is not to demean women, but to tell you that your parenting styles are rather too sentimental and too empathetic. It is love that is too permissive. And when it is a permissive love, the children will not truly learn. So the men's approach in cultural logic is love should not be too permissive. And that is what we are preaching. With the belief that the best gift parents can give their children are opportunity for a joyful, productive, and responsible upbringing, there have been evidences, we have not said in all cases, there have been evidences that the Yoruba's philosophical approach to parenting with love and cultural logic, as embedded in the aphorism evoked in the title of this lecture, has largely helped to achieve those results. Again, has largely helped to achieve those results. It must be emphasized, however, in favor of women, that this traditional patriarchy-centered approach to parenting is not foolproof in all cases. It doesn't work every time. But it is one that has offered evidential success in most situations. Perhaps one of its advantages is that it does not give room for feminine wives, while simultaneously stamping failure autocracy. So it doesn't allow you to take away the superiority of a man from society, especially to prevent women from using their wives to mislead the children, as Eve misled Adam in the Bible and led Adam to deresponsabilize when God asked him why he did it. I learned something from women. When their male children are being as manly as the culture says, that's my child. When the wife of their son changes it for them, don't, you're lolly one. The child, that woman would rather go back to their house. Okay, now, okay, you're a man now, and you're your father's son. Ladies and gentlemen, barring this jocular analogy, actually, I hereby emphasize that the aphorism is just a man-fronting strategy in Yoruba society while parenting children. And it is targeted at bringing out the best in children. Contrary to initial assumption on saying the title of this work, it is not a woman condemning one. After all, in reality, it is the man who largely reap men's sacrificial effort on the children. Hence, the Yoruba saying, "Ọmọ tó pawó níyà ẹ̀ ń yìn." It is a child who makes money that the mother praises. To give some convincing view here, you would see that all beautiful, lovely, and encouraging songs are for the mother. The audience can give me one. Oh, you see that? Another? Ìyá ní wúrà iyebíye. Ìyá kò lè fowó ra. A more diminishing one for the man that looks beautiful is ìyá ní wúrà, bàbá ní díngì. What is wúrà? Gold. That ornament you preserve. Dingy is that which breaks and is all right? The fragility of attitudinal feeling and affection for men. If these are the realities, and the song that is most popular for men is after death, unfortunately, Unfortunately, and very disappointingly, do we now sincerely say a good child is the father's? So, in my opinion, the aphorism, a good child is the father's, a bad one, the mother's, is a mere egoistic consolation for Yoruba men, irrespective of its value of honoring good parenting. I submit. Interestingly, this lecture has thus advanced position against indigenous knowledge devaluation with respect to macho-sensitive language use for parenting benefits, while simultaneously projecting the pliability of the Moluabi system of governance in Yoruba parenting discursive context. The chairman, sir, my vice chancellor, distinguished audience, let me end this lecture on a rhetorical note by asking this question. Since the Yoruba culture largely credits only men rather, for a child's positive orientation to the Omoluabi values, while blaming women for the opposite behavior, should Yoruba women then reactively leave parenting with the Omoluabi culture for the men alone? I leave this as a food for thought, but with the caveat that when in Rome, do as Romans do.
Thank you all for being part of this lecture. And I want to say that the standing ovation given to the lecturer is a confirmation that we have really enjoyed what he has dished out. On this note, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, with the kind permission of the Vice Chancellor, I want to call on just two people for comments and observations. The first person will be his supervisor has confirmed, Professor Akin Odebumi.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The Vice Chancellor, ably represented by my brother, the Dean of the Faculty. Well, that's a mistake. The Deputy Vice Chancellor is here, the Principal Officers, the DVC, the Registrar, the Dean of the Faculty, Deans of other faculties, heads of department, and other persons are available at this event. Well, I would like to say that what you see is what Niyi is. Professor Niyi Osunbade, that's what he is. I'm very proud of him anyway. Well, I'm very proud of him. He finished his PhD with me 15 years ago. And yet, he has continued to grow vibrant and vibrant. And you can see what he has turned out to be. Well, I will say that, well, I'll speak for just a few minutes, then I sit down. I'll say that Professor Niyi Osunbade, I call him Niyi, for many reasons. He's professor, but it's Niyi. I'm acting to all my bosses, but I'm also professor. So two things that he called tenor the last time. But two things I want to talk about. The first one is that Niyi himself is an Omoluabi person. And I want to give two instances only. You might have your own experiences. Adeniyi will never greet me standing up. He will prostrate each time he greets me. Each time he greets me. And then number two, he does not stretch his hand to shake me. He doesn't shake hands with me. I did it deliberately when I came here. He was surprised that I did that to him. He would not want to stretch forth his hand to have a handshake with me. Can we give him a round of applause for that, please? I want to say that on the paper, he has done what a typical pragmatician, not just a typical, a brilliant pragmatician and discourse analyst would do. He has treated us to a good meal on the Omoluabi concept and also to the concept of responsibilization and deresponsibilization. What came out, which did not come out early, I was surprised he was not going to, I thought he was not going to say it. It wasn't going to be balanced, but I was waiting to see whether or not it will make it. Is that we have the societal level where the society responsibilizes or deresponsibilizes. And that is the ideology, the critical discourse. Then we have the level where the individual does so or the group does so. That is the pragmatics. And that is where he's qualified to be a professor of discourse analysis and pragmatics. So on this note, I say congratulations to Adeniyi Osunbade, the professor of discourse analysis and pragmatics. Congratulations to the faculty and congratulations to the university. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. I said I was going to identify two people. Please, the chief imam, can we have you?
I stand on existing protocol. Let me congratulate the lecturer, Professor Adeniyi Osunbade. Congratulations for a lecture well delivered. My comment is that the discourse presented by the last guest lecturer, faculty lecturer, Professor Adejuma, and that of today have delved into the socio-cultural context of the Yoruba community, pristine community, by extension, the African culture that produce very peaceful and harmonious society that led to the growth of science and technology that was even more advanced than that of Europe before coming of the Europeans. Now, what are we talking about? When university don't make researches like this, what we need to do is to implement such researches. That is to marry the town and gown to produce an advanced society. Nations have done that. The Japanese, the Chinese, the Indians. The Chinese own TikTok, yet they use the technology to promote their culture and sciences and technology among the youth. So we need to do that, look into that very well in this country. Secondly, when you are looking into the way the African culture has been dislocated, the interpolation of African culture that has produced chaotic society today, scholars need to do more into that research and it should be implemented. So I'm looking forward to somebody in the Faculty of Science and Social Sciences, Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, to look into the issue of community parenting, which has been lost and has been part of the problems of child upbringing in this country. So once again, congratulations to the lecturer, the Dean, Faculty of Arts and Sciences, and my colleagues. Congratulations to you all, and my students too.
Mr. Vice Chancellor, distinguished members of the high table, members of the academic communities, every distinguished Nigerians present in this hall. Technically, we have come to the end of this event, and I want to call on Dr. A.G. Oyekola to come and give the vote of thanks.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm still standing on the existing protocol, and I want to use this medium to thank the Vice Chancellor, ably represented by Professor Ogunwale, the Deputy Vice Chancellors, and other principal officers. We thank you very much for coming here to honor the faculty. On behalf of the Dean and other members of the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, we give all glory to God Almighty. And we sincerely thank this young, vibrant scholar who has delivered a very good lecture to each and every one of us today. Thank you for teaching us, that is men, not to live in a full paradise by believing that the good child belongs to us, men. It is outrightly clear that both the good and the bad child are mothers. And I can give you examples. When a child succeeds, he travels out, and they have a child outside the country. Who will go there? There was one imam. He was asking women questions. But when armed robber comes, who should face the armed robber? They will say men. When the chief imam, the imam asked the women, who should die first between mother and the father? The women answered men. So why are we men believing that the good child belongs to us? So every good thing, both the bad and good children, belongs to the women. We should learn how to eat part of it. I want to believe that it's a psychological upbringing that we are trying to use. And thank you also for teaching women to know how to hold a machete. And as Saidi Osupa said, Oje Lokunrin, fún gbogbo alágbẹ̀dẹ tó bá gbọ́n. So you are the alágbẹ̀dẹ, and you should know how to bend men to dance to your tunes. Thank you very much. I also want to thank our in-laws. You know, the prince is a prince, and he's also married to a princess. So we want to thank our in-laws that are here today. We thank all the students. We thank the committee that is in charge of these activities. And I want to say kudos to our deans. As he said, more are coming. Thank you for coming. God bless you all.
Please let us rise to take the anthems in reverse order. Please remain standing while the Vice Chancellor's procession leave.
It's lovely, Lautech. You've kept the promise. Now we're singing. All dressed in splendor, as your promise again is kept.